so much for tuning in. So today is all about building letter knowledge. So I've kind of got a series of learning how to read going on here. Started off with the beginner phonological awareness. This week we're going to talk about building letter knowledge. It's kind of the next step that we want to think about after we're looking at rhyming and alliteration. And really these things could be happening at the same time. And then next week we are going to jump into intermediate phonological awareness. So we'll jump back over to that for just a little bit. And really quickly, before I keep going, I'm just going to check the comments. Perfect. Going to jump in. Y'all probably just heard me talking. Anyways, I just wanted to make sure that we were live and good to go because I did not want a repeat of last week. So, building letter knowledge. Here is today's roadmap. We are going to start off with letter recognition versus alphabetic knowledge. Just a little bit of background for all of us before we jump in. And then I'm going to discuss things that I have found to be very successful whole group, things that have worked successfully small group, a few ways that we can incorporate some movement, and then a look at assessing our students' letter knowledge. Now, this is super foundational because in order to be able to read, students have to be able to recognize letters, and we need to be able to recognize them instantly, not just the letter, but also the letter sound that goes with it. Because if we're spending all of our time trying to identify the letter or trying to identify what sound that letter can make, then we are really going to lose sight of the meaning of what we're reading, which is really the goal of reading, is that comprehension piece. So let's take a look at letter recognition versus alphabetic knowledge. So it's kind of a little trick here, kind of like phonemic awareness and phonological awareness. Alphabetic knowledge really encompasses all of these four areas, beginning with letter recognition, which is typically what students go through first, where we're able to recognize and identify both the uppercase and the lowercase forms of each letter. I don't know that there is a lot of good research on teaching one or the other first. I do know that a lot of pre-K programs, if your school has a pre-K program, will generally start with the uppercase program or uppercase letters because they tend to have more distinct lines. So that's just a little nuance there. But in kindergarten, we're definitely looking at both of them really at the same time. Then we're moving on to naming letters, where we're internalizing the shape of each letter and how that corresponds to the letter's name. Then letter sounds, where we produce the primary sound for a letter, shape, or name. So maybe not all the different sounds the letter can make, but the primary. And then writing, whether it's a tracing activity or writing a letter independently. And again, the things I'm going to show you today, I like to work on all of these things almost at the same time. Now, there may be a little bit of lag between getting students to recognize versus getting to write, and I understand that, but because we have students at all different levels, I like to kind of try and get a little bit of practice on everything going within the same time. And this is just a little quote from a recent blog post that I put up that I think is very important that we focus on as we're talking about letter knowledge today. And that is, students cannot succeed in decoding and writing if they are spending their brain power trying to identify letters or recalling what they look like. I mentioned that previously when we started the live, but definitely something to keep in mind that this is a very foundational skill for students, and there's some pressure, right? There's pressure if let's use kindergarten for example, that maybe your students are to be at a level, y'all, it's been a day, a level D by the end of the year. Now, every school is different, every district is different, I get that. I've worked in schools though where they're expecting a level D by the end of the year. Now, we're not going to go into, do I think that's the right thing or the wrong thing? But sometimes we get so caught up in, oh my gosh, I have got to get my students to this level by this date. And we lose sight of these foundational literacy skills that students need to have. And it ends up hurting them in the long run, right? These skills are what are going to enable our students to read well beyond a level D and well beyond what they're going to be comprehending in a level D. They're going to be able to read much more complex text. So we definitely want to make sure that we are taking the time to give our students this really important practice. So let's look at a few whole group activities that you can do with your students. The first one is an alphabet card routine. My third year of teaching, I got to go observe in a school in New Orleans, Louisiana. It was an awesome trip. I love New Orleans. I'm actually from Pensacola, Florida originally, and so it's about 3 hours from New Orleans, so I used to get to go all the time. But anyways, the school sent a group of us teachers, and we got to go observe in some of the other schools in New Orleans. And one of the things that I picked up that the kindergarten teachers were doing was they called it the alphabet book. I'm just calling them an alphabet cards routine for now. And they did this every single day just for that repeated exposure. It is a routine that literally takes 1 to 2 minutes. So it's something that you can build in at the beginning of your literacy block. You can build it into your calendar time, whatever really works for you. And I'm just going to model what I would do with students with our ABC book or alphabet cards. So it always starts off with me giving the letter name, the picture that's associated, and then the letter sound. It's really important that we are giving students a picture to help them cement these letters in their mind. So, for example, C, caret, K, and then the students would repeat C, caret, K. And this is a really, really nice time, too, for letters that students might add a schwa to, like the B sound, and they're saying buh, and you can hear that happening. You can correct that in the whole group as you are working through these. But I would just go through the entire alphabet. And the reason that I'm doing it first is we're assuming, especially if we're in kindergarten, that students don't know all of the letter names, sounds, all of these relationships yet. So I want to be front-loading them with this information. Again, it only takes a minute or two, and kids love it. I promise if you start doing it and then you try to skip a day, the kids are going to be like, hey, we didn't do the ABC book today. So give that a try. You can actually download a free copy of this on my blog. I'm going to share the link to where you can grab that at the end of this live, so hang out for that. They are full-size pages if you want to make it full-size, but I have in the resource how to print them at this small size because I just like keeping things smaller for space issues. So moving on, that's kind of like front-loading all of this letter knowledge with students and just a whole group thing that we're doing together. I recommend, and a lot of the research out there is to introduce 2 to 3 letters a week. Maybe you're at 4 letters a week. And I think the really important thing here is to not be introducing 1 letter a week, because the problem with doing the 1 letter a week approach is that it is going to take you, if you have like a mid-August start date of school, you're going to be going over letters until late February, mid-March with your students. So you've almost spent the entire year going over the alphabet, and students really can handle more than that. So I recommend 2 to 3 letters a week. When I was in kindergarten, we did 2, but I know a lot of teachers have had success with 3, maybe even 4. You really just adjust that based on your students' needs and their growth. You are the best. You're able to feel that the best, how your students are doing, and you're able to adjust that as needed. So as we're introducing one of those letters of the week, I always like to do a circle map with my students. This is backwards from where I want to be. And so I don't like to make these super huge. Let me get rid of this for a second. There we go. I don't like to make these anchor charts giant because wall space is always an issue. So I just do, this is actually 2 pieces of regular construction paper glued together. But if you have the larger construction paper packs, those work really well as well. So as we're introducing this letter, I like to have students help come up with words that begin with that letter sound. And we are just going to jot these on our bubble map as we're going. It's also a really nice idea to have students having their own copy of this bubble map. So you can just do a piece of paper with the letter in the middle that you are introducing and let them add the pictures themselves. So for example, our first picture might be table. And this is a place that I also, depending on where we are in the year, maybe not right at the beginning of the year, but I like to either model pinching out the sounds or sounding out the word and writing all the sounds that I hear, or as the year goes by, I'll have students help me. And so if you walk into my kindergarten classroom at any given day, these words on here may not be spelled correctly, and that's okay because I'm wanting my students to use inventive spelling and use the sounds and the relationships that they're hearing. So just for sake of today, I'm adding the word underneath. A lot of times I might do the target letter in a different color just so that it stands out a little bit more to the students. But anyways, we go through that and we're filling up our chart. Throughout the week, they'll probably come up with more words, and it's always fun to go back and add some more as well. But those are really nice. I do these hole punched at the top. And then I put big binder rings on them, and then I just hang them on push pins on the wall. And that way our whole alphabet that we have gone through is always available for students to go back and look at if they need to. And I am trying to organize myself because I have a lot of stuff today, y'all. All right, so that is the letter circle maps. Moving on from that, a sound scavenger hunt can be something that's really nice if we're working a lot on the letter sounds. Again, like I said, I like to bring a lot of this practice in, especially if students are able to identify the letters when they are looking at them, or you're able to tell them the letter and they're able to point at it. I like to introduce this. But you can go on a sound scavenger hunt, kind of like what I was just doing with the bubble map, but have students looking in their classroom, looking at home, wherever they're at, looking in a book for pictures or objects that start with that letter sound, and then they can record those as well. Then looking at some ideas for small group practice, I recommend if your students are struggling with identifying letters, being able to recognize them, being able to name them, and then moving into those letter sounds. If they're struggling, especially with identifying them, I recommend starting with the letters of their name. Because those are very important letters to students. And I should have mentioned this earlier. There's lots of theories and ideas for what order you should introduce the letters. You can Google that, and your district may already have a scope and sequence of what order they want the letters introduced into. There are some really helpful documents out there that will show you how common letters are, and you want to be teaching those super common letters, like T is one of them, that they're going to see in a lot of words. You want to introduce those first. But let's move on to the letters of our name, and I like to do practice these in small group with my students, because again, not all students are going to need this level of almost intervention. But I am going to have a baggie or a little pencil pouch, whatever, with the student's name already written. I'm not asking them to write it. It's written for them. I've cut it apart, so I just wrote it on a sentence strip, cut it apart, and I am going to flip cameras so that you can see. Here we go. We'll get rid of this. Here we go. So I just have Marie's name written out on a sentence strip, and then I literally just cut it apart, and then we will use these over and over. So once they use them one day, they go back in the bag, and then we use them again at the next small group. And so what the goal of this is to have the student put the letters in correct order, but not just put them in order, but name the letter as they are putting it in order. So for example, M, A, R, I, E. This is very important that they are saying the name of the letter out loud as they are building. That's the point of this activity, is to get them to be able to recognize the letters in their name if they're struggling with that. Then I would have the students mix it up. And then I might say, okay, who can build their name the fastest while saying the letters? You know, you can add a little bit of element of fun into it that way as well. But that's a very, very quick, it literally takes like a minute of your small group time, and it's very impactful because it's their name, so they're bought into it. The next thing, I'm going to keep this camera on for just a moment, are letter sorts. Now, the reason I like to do these small group, you can do them whole group. I like to do them small group so I can give immediate feedback as students are working. So if they're having an issue with the letter sort, then I can give them that immediate corrective feedback so that they're not internalizing any information that's not correct. So the first way that you can do letter sorts is by match versus non-match. So letters that match maybe a letter that you're focusing on. So maybe the letter of the day, or not the letter of the day, but the letter that you are focusing on so far this week is the letter G. A bin or a baggie or whatever of letters, and then students are going to sort these letters based on if they are the letter G or they are not the letter G. So we are identifying this target letter. This is also really nice if you can get a few different sets of the magnetic letters so you have different fonts. I really like students being exposed to different fonts as well so that they don't only see a G this way and think that's a G, because there's that, I don't even know what it's called off the top of my head, but the G with the crazy swirls, you know, exposing them to those things is really nice as well. So that would be sorting by if they are that letter or they are not that letter. Again, these are super quick activities, and if you keep your guided reading area organized, then these are easy to just pull out of a bin and ready to go. You can organize by category. Now, I believe the next one's category. Let me go back. Yes, by category. And so students can create their own category for how they want to sort these. I've just given you an example of sorting by straight lines only or curves. This one might be a little bit more basic, where we're not even able to necessarily identify the letter yet, but we are able to look at the shapes of the letters. So straight lines only, letters with curves. Again, I've just got a little bin here that I'm working through just to show you an example of what that would look like. Okay, so you can see the difference here. It's really nice for students to be able to play around with the shapes, or not really, they're not shapes, but the lines that are making letters, because it helps cement that knowledge in their mind again. And then the final sort, obviously there are more sorts than this, but I'm just showing you 3 today. The final one I want to show all of you is sorting by letter. So this is really good as a review if you've done, say, 3 letters that week, to give a bin. Okay, I'm getting my bins all mixed up, y'all. Give a bin of just those 3 letters, and then students are going to sort those out and say the name or say the letter sound each time they place it. So B or B, B or B, N, N, S, S. So you get the point, and we are sorting those out. That's just a nice way to review, maybe at the end of the week. Maybe that's part of your Friday lesson with the students. So that is sorting. Let's go back to our small group. The next thing would be a letter hunt. And the way that you might work a letter hunt, the way that I like to do it is either have students get out a book that they're reading and they're looking for letters. In that, if you are doing a poem of the week, which I talked about last week when we talked about rhyming and alliteration, print out a copy of that poem and have them take a highlighter and highlight, circle all of the instances of that letter. Now, that takes some pre-planning if you want to make sure that letter is showing up a lot in that poem, which is going to give you more authentic practice. But y'all, highlighters are like a magic tool. So that is something that you might look at incorporating as well. If you don't have, sorry, I'm going back. If you don't have poems available, like I said, books, because you're using them in your classroom, you could probably maybe make a copy of a certain section of it or whatever for students to use. Just obviously nothing that we're distributing, just using with our students. And then the next thing is building letters, again, so that we can practice playing with shapes. And so the first one that I want to show is building with pipe cleaners. Now, I like to give students a model. I don't want them just guessing what these letter shapes are, but building with pipe cleaners, so it may not end up being the exact size depending on what size your pipe cleaners are. But here's our letter A, okay, our capital A, having them build the lowercase a, and so literally having them realize that they have to bend the pipe cleaner to create that letter is just really nice. You can also have them do this with erasers or any other kind of manipulative where they are building and just creating the lines. Again, just focusing on the straight line versus the curved line. I've got a picture up in the corner because, again, I like to have that picture associated with the letter just to help their thinking. And then the last way that I wanted to show you was working with Play-Doh. This one is fun. We don't do it all the time just because Play-Doh can get a little bit messy, but it's really good for fine motor in addition to practicing letters. But anyways, you have to teach students to get a ball of it and roll it between their hands. I try to teach them not to maybe roll it on the table because it leaves a little residue depending on what brand you have. But anyways, just rolling it out and creating the lines again that form that letter. So I won't go through all of it, but you get the gist of creating those letters. Whoop. There we go. So letter A. All right. Let's see what we've got next. I think I am back on camera. Yes. Okay. So adding a little bit of movement into your practice. So I just showed you some ways that are still very kinesthetic to build letters and practice letter formation. But another thing that I like to do is skywriting. And this gets the body engaged as well. And with skywriting, the students are going to take their dominant hand, the hand that they write with, hold it completely straight out in front of them. And then if you're doing the letter A, again, I like to have a model up on the wall that maybe they're kind of tracing, but they are tracing again with that nice straight arm and just skywriting the letter. Whatever the letter is that you are practicing that day. This one is really fun, but it depends on the space in your classroom or wherever students are learning right now. Making the shape with your body or trying to make the shape with your body, students get very creative with this. I'm going to give you a very simple one, V, so I can make a V with my body here. Get out of the camera. There we go. But students, trust me, get very creative, but it's very fun and gets their body engaged, which helps them to remember the shape of that letter. And then the next way It's really not a lot of movement. Probably could have went with my last slide, but I stuck it here anyways. Would be page protectors and dry erase markers. This is something that I do like to do small group as well. And whatever maybe that target letter is that we are working on for writing or identifying, I'm going to print out a page that just has that letter on it. And I like to put these in page protectors because I do not want to be printing these out all the time. And that way I can just have literally the alphabet in a binder and just pull out the page that a student might need. And so we are going to practice that great letter formation, saying the letter A, 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 A. Again, students love being able to use dry erase markers or tools that maybe are reserved for things like small group time. So that's a really fun way to add in practice. And if they need a little more practice, erase it, have them do it again. But getting them to say the letter each time is going to help cement that letter in their minds. So I definitely recommend doing that. Let's switch back. Oh, I feel like our time today is coming towards an end. It is. Let's talk about assessing. That is the last thing that we are going to discuss today as we discuss letter knowledge or alphabetic knowledge. I prefer, especially for a skill that is this important and nuanced, to do it one-on-one. I want to sit down with my students, and so that can look a lot of different ways. It might be as students come in the morning, you have that one student that's always there really early, pull that student then. Maybe you have a student that's the last one to get picked up in the afternoon, pull that student then. Maybe Fridays you don't meet with groups or small groups, and so maybe you're pulling students one-on-one then. Normally this is something that can be done fairly quickly, so it doesn't take a lot of time, and you just get so much valuable information, and we've already discussed the importance of letter knowledge, so it's something that we want to make sure that we are not missing. Now, when you're assessing, you want to be very clear what you are looking for. Are you looking for the students to be able to point to the letter? If you say, where's the letter A? Are you looking for them to be able to name the letter? Are you looking for them to be able to give you the letter sound? Are we differentiating between the uppercase and lowercase letters? When I taught kindergarten, we did differentiate between that. We would assess lowercase recognition as well as uppercase recognition because you're going to see both as you're reading. So one thing that I did was I set up on an iPad just a quick little assessment tool for myself that I could swipe through and students could just read. It's very simple. I can go in and change. The way I built this is I just opened up a PowerPoint, added a color to the background, put a text box in there and made it size like 400, did a nice clear font for the students and did one letter on each slide. Then you can save it as a PDF. And once it's a PDF, I just airdropped it to my iPad. And now it is living in iBooks. So I just click that. It's open now because I already opened it. But anyways, you can go through, you can have your paper that you are checking on, or maybe you're just making notes of the ones that the students aren't able to recognize. And so you can use this to assess, can they name the letter? You can use it to assess if they can produce the letter's primary sound. And here's the uppercase version. But you can do this with so many different things. And it just makes assessing really easy and really quick. But that is it, y'all. Those are my tips for you for letter knowledge. If you are wanting a little bit more information, my blog post has some other ideas. Obviously, I could not cover everything that goes into letter knowledge or alphabetic principle. But if you check out the teachingtexan.com/letter knowledge, there's some more information and details there. You can grab your free download of the alphabet cards, the ABC book, and try those out with your students as well. And let me know what questions you have, if you found any of this helpful. I know that we are all tired right now, but I'm doing this because I want to share things that have been successful for me, because when I started out teaching guided reading, even though I had a master's degree, I really did not know, how to put it into practice, right? I knew all the theory behind it, but how do I make it work with my students? And so that's what this series is about. So I hope that you will join me next week. We'll be live again on Thursday at 4:30. We have no more live issues like last week, and we'll be talking about intermediate phonological awareness. So we'll be taking a next step up, and I hope to see you there.